is going on, everyone? Thank you so much for checking out my video as I celebrate 40th anniversary. 40 years of one of the greatest horror films of all time, A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's hard to believe that it's been 40 years since Wes Craven gave us this film. And, I wanted to individually rate the entire franchise film by film and discuss and review them. I know that I've already done a couple videos on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. One of my first ones was worst to best of the films, and then I also did a tier ranking of the Freddy Krueger makeup. And I eventually wanted to get through to being able to discuss each film one by one, giving it a grade that I feel like it deserves. It's like, all the way from an A to an F. I wanted to do that with the Friday 13th franchise as well as the Halloween. And when I found out it was the 40th anniversary coming up, I was like, hey, what a way to start off with A Nightmare on Elm Street. But with that being said, what I kind of want to do in this video is discuss whether the film still lives up 40 years later, how the effects look, how the props look, how the storyline, the acting, just everything about the film. But before I get started into that, on my other podcast, Small Town Horror with Johnny and Randy, which I will put the link below, we just reviewed A Nightmare on Elm Street celebrating the 40th anniversary. And if you want to check that out, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can download us on iTunes, or like I said, you can check in the link in the bottom of my bio, and it'll actually have our YouTube channel. But with that being said, let's get into it. So in 1984, Wes Craven introduced the entire world to one of the most iconic horror slashers of all time, Freddy Krueger. And we all know the backstory as far as how Wes Craven came up with the idea of this character. And if you don't know, by all means, look up the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary. It's a tremendous documentary. I believe it's like 3 hours long, and it goes through each film, and Wes Craven's on there and explains how he came up with Freddy Krueger, how he came up with the look, and how he came up with like the kids being sleep deprived and not being able to sleep. It was just very, very creepy stuff. But nevertheless, A Nightmare on Elm Street, in my opinion, is definitely one of the films that here it is 40 years later, and I still feel like it lives up to expectations. I do feel like this is one of those films that you could show the younger generation now. And yes, granted, there may be some cheesy stuff in it at times, but I feel like it's still a creepy movie. And this is before we got Freddy, where he was really humorous and he would say the one-liners and stuff. This right here is a really dark version of Freddy. I love this version, and I would even say Part 2 Freddy was one of the most creepiest Freddys as well. But besides the sequels, I really don't want to get a whole lot into the sequels. But having watched this the other day, I just feel like the film still holds up well. I really like the cast in this film. As far as the cast, we have the one and only Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. We also have Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. And making his big screen debut was Johnny Depp as Glenn. We also have the one and only John Saxon plays Donald Thompson. I hope I say her name correctly. Amanda Wyss plays Tina. Jesus Garcia plays Rod. And Ronnie Blakely, she plays Marge. Overall, I think the casting was really well for this film. I feel like the kids actually look like their age. They look like high schoolers. I don't know really what their ages were when they made the film, but this is one of those films that I feel like there was no characters as far as the teenage characters that made you just really want to see them get killed by Freddy. Most horror films, they've always got, the wholesome girl, the boyfriend, the slut, and the jock, and the drug user, and stuff like that. And this film didn't focus on stuff like that. I'll say that, in my opinion, if I was going to go ahead and mention any bad acting or somebody that kind of ruined some moments, I would say it was Ronnie Blakely. I hope I say her name right, but she played Marge. She played Nancy's mom. Not saying that she's a bad actress, but I felt like watching it now, I didn't ever realize how her acting was kind of like a soap opera acting. Uh, she was like trying to be real dramatic through her scenes, and I don't know if she was supposed to be like buzzed the entire movie, but uh, I believe there's a scene in the kitchen where Nancy's talking to her, and it's about when she pulled out Freddy Krueger's hat, and it's even the way that when Nancy starts talking to her mom and her mom turns to the side, it's almost like I was waiting for her to do like this, just throw her hands up. It was very dramatic. Also, like I will give her props because there's two scenes that I actually feel like stuck out to me on her acting. Was where Nancy's in the bathtub and she's talking to her on the other side of the door, telling her to be careful, don't fall asleep. And then once Nancy does fall asleep and gets taken into the bathtub from Freddy, her reaction to hearing her daughter scream and her trying to get in the door, I feel like she did a tremendous job on that scene. And then at the end, when Nancy turns her back on Freddy and pretty much says, "I give you all the, or I take back all the power that I gave you." And then when she opens the door and it's daytime and her mom comes out, she's like, "Oh, I feel $1 million," and she was like, "I'm just going to quit drinking, honey." I feel like her acting was good in that scene. But throughout the film, like I said, it's just she doesn't have really a whole lot of facial expressions, and she's just kind of a dull character. But it wasn't enough to ruin the movie. But as far as the acting, I feel like I said, the cast was phenomenal in this film, um, and I really couldn't picture anybody else playing Nancy Thompson. I think Heather Langenkamp did an amazing job. She had that wholesomeness about her, and she really was like through the whole movie where Glenn, her boyfriend, aka, Johnny Depp, where he was trying to get with her on a few scenes, she'd always turn him down. Nope, don't even think about it. So they made her such a likable character that you did root for her. And then at the end, she became a total um, badass, excuse my language. But yeah, and John Saxton, he's an amazing actor, which he's in one of my favorite films, Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. I thought he always did a great job in that movie as well, but he's a very well known actor. And yeah, I think he was casted perfect. But overall, as far as the acting, I think everybody did a good job except for, like I said, the woman that played Nancy's mom. She could have been better, but uh, Amanda, like I said, I hope I don't ruin her name, Wiss, who played Tina. I would have liked to see a little bit more of her in this film, but her death scene was phenomenal. But that's as far as my opinions on the acting. Now, as far as the practical effects and the kill scenes, I still got to say that I'm really old school. I like the practical effects, even if you can tell that it's fake or it's claymation or it's silicone. I still like that. I prefer the hard work that the people designed and put in their time. I'm not a big CGI person. I know CGI can look really good, but I just appreciate more of the practical effects. And I think that um, Tina's death scene is one of the best death scenes in any horror film. I think it's one of the scariest scenes. Just to think that you're laying there, Rod was laying next to her, and you see your girlfriend kicking and screaming, and then she gets sliced right down the middle, and nobody's there. And then when she gets picked up, she's spinning around the room, and then she's all of a sudden getting drug up the wall and stuff. That scene really sticks with you to this day, 40 years later, and I think it really holds up. Very creative. I love that scene. It's one of my favorite death scenes, and it still packs a punch, in my opinion. Um, but even to where when Freddy is chasing her, I like the cat and mouse game that he plays with Tina. And when she first sees him in the alleyway, and he's like, "Tina," and he's stretching out. Yeah, you can tell that it's practical effects. You can tell that it looks a little cheesy. His arms are growing long and stuff, but it's still representing that it's in the dream world. He can do things like that. It's supernatural. And of course, the famous line when she says uh, something like, I believe she says, "Help me, God," or something like that. And he goes, "This is God." The way he says it, you just you feel that. Like, and then he just books it and takes off running after her. Phenomenal scene. And um, I know that when he chases her and when he's behind the tree, she runs past the tree. I love when he jumps out and he's like, Tina. And she turns around, he's like, watch this. And he just takes his blade and just cuts his two fingers off. And it's the way Freddy is looking. He's so sadistic. His eyes are real bug eyed and he's just smiling at her. And when he grabs a hold of her and they tumble over and fall on the ground, when she grabs his face and rips his face off and it's just a skeleton and that creepy laugh he does, I still think that holds up today. I don't think you would get the same feeling watching that if you watch CGI because you can physically see her pulling the face off. And I love it. Like I said, I still get excited watching this film. I really feel like so much work went into this movie. It's and the practical effects, it's just tremendous. And um actually, like even with Glenn's death scene, I know there was a behind the scenes footage that they deleted where after Johnny Depp or Glenn, whatever you want to call him, gets pulled down into the bed after the blood is coming up. I know that Johnny Depp comes out of the bed and then he slumps over. In my opinion, you didn't need to see that, and I'm glad they didn't put it in the movie because when he gets drugged down and the blood is coming up, it makes you really think what's happening. And everybody in the audience or anybody that watches the film can imagine what's happening to Glenn. And when he comes up, when I saw the deleted scene and he comes up and he's just bloody, there's no scratches or nothing, it didn't really hit. But I'm glad that whoever decided not to put that in the film, I'm glad that they took it out because I think it's just more effective way of using your imagination. And also, I feel like Rod's death scene in the jail cell, I think is still creepy. I love the way they shot it. I know when it shows that the cover is going, or the sheet is going around Rod's neck. I did watch where that was actually shot in reverse, where they were pulling it, making it look like that it was going the opposite direction. Like I said, it's just the simple fact that in 1984 they didn't have the CGI that we have today. They had to come up with their own stuff, and I really, really think that after 40 years, it still works. It's still phenomenal. But having said that, there is a couple cheesy parts to where when Freddy is lit on fire, which I love the scene, but they captured it for so long that you can tell that it's a stuntman with a fire suit on. And normally you can set it to the side and be like, I know it's a stuntman, but it still looks cool. But on this one, the camera focused so much on the stunt Freddy that you could tell that it was a stuntman. I think they could have cut that down a little bit. And then when Freddy is on top of Marge at the end and John Saxon's character runs in and throws the blanket over her and him, and when they take the blanket off, it's just a skeleton of Marge and she's like raising her hand up as she's going down. Yes, that's is cheesy. To where she's fading off into the bed. And finally, one of everybody's favorite scenes is, of course, the ending where when Nancy gets in the car with Rod and with Tina and with Glenn, and as they're taking off, you can see that I guess Freddy is taking over the car, and Marge is sitting there just waving, and all of a sudden Freddy busts through, grabs her, and pulls her through the window of the door. Of course, you can tell that that's fake. But I want to say that I actually seen something where they knew it looked cheesy, but they got a kick out of it, and that's why they kept it in. It's still a memorable ending, and I still love the ending. But like I said, now that's something that I feel like if you showed the newer generation, yeah, they're going to chuckle and laugh at it because, yeah, they're so used to CGI. And the practical effects, like I said, I feel like still hold up to the standards, except for just a couple spots. All right, so now we'll move on and discuss Freddy Krueger. I enjoy this version of Freddy. My favorite look of Freddy, if you've watched my other two videos, my favorite all-time look is from Freddy vs. Jason. I love that look of Freddy as far as it seems like his fedora was a little bit more dirtier. The makeup was perfect. His blades even seemed longer on his glove. And I love, love, love the fact that his sweater was not a bright red and green anymore. It was a dark red and green in Freddy vs. Jason. But that is my favorite Freddy look. But I feel like from this film, this is my favorite version of Freddy because he doesn't have the one-liners. He's not really comical in this film, and I even love his voice and how, like I said earlier, he does the whole cat and mouse thing. And this is before he could actually start doing like a lot of powers and stuff like that we see in the later films. But I love the simple fact that like even his right ear, the detail of his right ear is missing spots because of how burnt it is. I love the fact that the sweater only has the green and red around the torso and not his sleeves. I like that the sweater is dirty and it's baggy on him. Um, and the fact that even the hat is just a little different. Like I said, it's this one right here. I just absolutely love this look of Freddy. Um, and I feel like that if we never had got another sequel, I feel like A Nightmare on Elm Street would be a classic horror film. It would still be as big as it is today, but I don't know if Freddy would be the icon that he is. So that may be kind of controversial. Let me know your opinions down in the comments. But yeah, like I said, I absolutely love this version of Freddy, especially at the end when he comes up out of the sheets and he cuts through the sheets. And this is when Nancy turns her back and he goes, "Now you die." That he's just gritting his teeth and he's just so evil. And then she turns around and looks at him and she says, "I take back all the power I ever gave you." And that's a really good scene. But like I said, it's the fact that how Freddy's voice is. And I love the fact, like I said, I'll go back to it when he's messing with Tina and that whole scene, the look in his eyes when he's like, "Tina, watch this." And he's having fun cutting his fingers off. It was just enough humor, but it wasn't funny humor. It was creepy humor. It made you be like, holy crap, what would you do in that situation? But yeah, this is a phenomenal version of Freddy. So that's the big question. If this franchise had never got another sequel, if we had only had the one Nightmare on Elm Street film, would this be a huge success? I still feel like, yes, I feel like this film would be a standalone film. I feel like this film would be in people's top 5, the top 10 horror films because it was something unique. It is still something different. The concept of this man coming and haunting your dreams, and that's the way he's killing your kids off. It's unique. It's special. It's something that you've never heard of before. And we can all relate to not getting enough sleep and being scared of nightmares. So I do feel like this film, 40 years later, could have been a standalone film. I do love the sequels, but like I said, I think this film would still be as popular. But I don't know if Freddy would be as big of an icon. I mean, of course, he would be somebody's favorite just from this film. But I still don't know if we would have as much merchandise and stuff like that. Robert Englund is going to be a success no matter what. If he just did Freddy one time and then went off and did, he's too good of an actor not to be successful. That man's worked for everything he's got and he deserves everything he has. But I am happy that we got the sequels. But like I said, I do feel like this film could have worked as a standalone film. This film had a budget of $1.8 million. And in the box office, it made $57.1 million. So it definitely made its money's worth. And that just shows right there that this film was going to be a success no matter what. So now to the ranking. And of course, it should be no surprise to anyone. Like I've said at the beginning, this is in my top 5 horror films of all time. I will say this film still holds up 40 years later, still a great watch. And I'm going to give this movie a A. It's not going to get an A plus because there is certain things, like I said, about some of the acting and a couple of the cheesy practical effects. So it's not getting an A plus, but it's getting a solid A. And I highly recommend it. If you've never seen this film, where have you been? But don't just stream this film. No, buy this film. Whether you buy it on DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, whatever you buy your movies, buy them. Because this is definitely well worth it. Even if you've never seen any of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, this is an amazing film still 40 years later. And like I said, I still think that there's a reason why this franchise has such a cult following. I still feel like this film could have been a standalone film, and I think it would have just as much success as it did 40 years ago to now. I really do. All right, so that is my review celebrating the 40th anniversary of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Let me know in the comments what you guys and gals think. Is this your favorite version of Freddy? Is it your least favorite? Is this your favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film or your least favorite? I love to have these discussions with each and every one of you, and like I said, I do plan on going through the entire franchise. I may not do them back to back, but I do want to do each film individually. But like I said, I absolutely adore this film, and if you can't get enough, like I said, remember that I am posting the link down below where you can see mine and my buddy's take on this film. I do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in, and as always, God bless each and every one of you, and until next time.
This is God.